"You don't belong here," my future brother-in-law's mother said, her voice low enough that only I could hear it. "You should leave before you embarrass yourself further." I looked at her, said nothing, set my champagne glass on the nearest table, and walked out of the country club without looking back. I had barely made it to the parking lot when my phone buzzed. It was my husband. "I just pulled up," he said. "Where are you?" "Outside," I told him. "They asked me to leave." There was a long pause. "Go wait by the fountain," he said quietly. "I'll handle this. My name is Sarah, and I am 38 years old. I work as the chief financial officer of a mid-sized logistics firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. My husband, Daniel, is 49, and he built his company from a single leased truck and a rented garage into one of the fastest-growing supply chain businesses in the Southeast. We have been married for 4 years. Before that, we had 3 years of the kind of quiet, steady love that I had never expected to find. Not after everything that had come before. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I grew up in a small town in central Ohio, the older of 2 daughters. My mother worked the front desk at a dental office for 22 years. My father left when I was 12, not dramatically, not loudly. He just stopped coming home one week, and that was that. My mother never cried about it, at least not in front of us. She had too much to do. She packed his things into 2 boxes, stacked them by the front door in case he ever came back for them, and then she made dinner. My sister Claire was 7 when he left. She was young enough that she doesn't really remember him, which I used to think was a mercy. Now I think it just meant she idealized the idea of having a father more than I ever did. I remembered the real version. For years, it was the 3 of us. My mother worked, and we went to school, and on weekends, we drove to the farmer's market and came home and watched movies on the couch, and it was small, and it was ours. I graduated high school and went straight to work. College was not something my mother could afford, and I didn't want to put that weight on her. I got a job at a regional trucking company doing data entry, and within 8 months I had taught myself enough about logistics software that they moved me into operations. Claire was brilliant. I mean that without any bitterness. She was genuinely, obviously gifted in a way that made the people around her stop and take notice. Math came to her the way breathing comes to other people. Her teachers talked about her like she was something rare. I knew by the time she was in 8th grade that she would go to college, and I knew that I would help make it happen. I took a second job for 2 years. I picked up every overtime hour my primary job offered. I opened a separate savings account that I labeled simply Claire, and I added to it every month without exception. I also kept pushing at my own career, not out of ambition exactly, but out of necessity. 3 raises meant more I could put aside. Every promotion meant more security for both of us. I studied at night. I earned a professional certification in supply chain management and then another one in financial analysis. I was not working toward a dream. I was working toward stability, which, if you've never had it, is its own kind of dream. My mother passed away when Claire was a junior in high school. It was sudden, a blood clot, a Tuesday morning, a phone call I still can't fully think about without the floor going out from under me. I was 26. Claire was 16. And then it was just us. We got through it the way you get through things when you don't have a choice. I kept working. Claire kept studying. She came home from school, and I had dinner ready, and we sat at the kitchen table and did not talk about how quiet the house was, and eventually, the quiet became something we lived inside, instead of something that crushed us. She graduated as valedictorian. She got a scholarship that covered most of her tuition, and I covered the rest without telling her how much it cost me. She chose a university 3 hours away in Columbus, and I helped her move into her dorm on a hot Saturday in August and drove home alone and cried the entire way back on the highway, not because I was sad, but because I was so proud of her that I didn't know what else to do with it. With Claire in school and stable, something shifted in me. I had spent so many years living for the next thing that needed to be handled that I had never really built a life of my own. I was good at my job. I was disciplined. I had a small apartment and a reliable car, and I could pay my bills and save money. But beyond that, I had almost nothing. No real friendships to speak of, because I had never had time to tend them. No relationship that lasted more than a few months, because I was always too tired or too busy or too guarded. That was when I took a job at Holloway Logistics. It was a significant step up, Director of Financial Operations, a real salary, a real team. Daniel Holloway had started the company 11 years earlier, and he was still the one who showed up first in the morning and left last at night. He was not what I expected. I had imagined a certain kind of man who builds a company like his loud, self-congratulatory, the kind who reminds you of his success every 15 minutes. Daniel was the opposite of that. He was precise and serious, and he had a way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We worked together for about a year before anything shifted between us. Then one evening we were the last two in the office, going over projections for a new contract, and he said, without looking up from his laptop, "Do you ever actually stop working, Sarah?" And I laughed, genuinely, which surprised me. "Do you?" I asked. He looked up then. "I'm trying to figure out how," he said. That was the beginning. We took it slowly, which suited both of us. He was 11 years older than me, and had been through a difficult divorce a long time ago. I had spent so many years being careful that I had almost forgotten how to let someone in. We had dinner, we talked. We drove up to the mountains one weekend just to walk around and eat bad food and not talk about work. I told him about my mother, about my father leaving, about the years of holding everything together. He listened to all of it. He didn't try to fix it or minimize it. He just listened, and then he said, "You've been carrying a lot for a long time." That was all, but it was enough. Claire finished her degree in accounting. She was sharp and ambitious, and she reminded me of myself at her age, except that she had confidence I had to work years to develop. She called me the night before her graduation and said, "I met someone, by the way." Her voice had that careful lightness that meant it was not casual at all. "Tell me," I said. "His name is Ryan," she said. "We met at a networking event, junior year, and I've been waiting for the right time to mention him." "How long have you been together?" I asked. 14 months, she said. I laughed. "Claire, I know, she said. I wanted to be sure first. Ryan was 26, a year younger than Claire. He was the kind of young man who seemed to be going somewhere focused, well-spoken, genuinely kind to my sister in the ways that matter. He and Claire had started a small financial consulting practice together during their senior year, and they were already, improbably, profitable. I liked him immediately. I was glad for my sister in a way that felt clean and uncomplicated. Meeting his parents was a different matter. His father, Gerald, owned a chain of car dealerships across the Carolinas. His mother, Margaret, came from old Charlotte money, not the kind that builds things, but the kind that has always had things and considers that a virtue in itself. The first time I met them was at a dinner at their home, a large house in Myers Park with a circular driveway and a catered meal for 6 people. Daniel was with me. I had been nervous in a way I hadn't expected, not because I was insecure, but because I knew the type and I knew how the type could make you feel. Margaret was gracious enough at the surface. She asked me polite questions about my work. She said the right things, but there was something in how she looked at me, a kind of careful assessment that you feel more than see, that told me she had already made a decision. I caught her asking Claire, when she thought I was out of earshot, about our childhood, about our parents, about whether my mother had passed some time ago. The way she said it, the way she filed the information away. The evening ended pleasantly. Daniel drove us home, and I said nothing about it. He reached over and took my hand on the highway, and I let him, and we didn't talk, and it was fine. 2 months later, Margaret called me. Not Claire. Me. She had gotten my number from Ryan without telling him why. She asked if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us, woman to woman, to talk about the wedding. I agreed, which I now recognize as my first mistake, not because I should have refused, but because I went in without understanding what I was walking into. We met at a bakery in Dilworth on a Thursday morning. She was already seated when I arrived, her handbag on the table, her coffee already ordered. She smiled warmly and told me how lovely it was and asked about Daniel, and then, once we had gotten through enough pleasantries, that it felt like common ground had been established, she said, "I want to be honest with you, Sarah, because I think honesty is important between family." I told her I appreciated that. "We're very fond of Claire," she said. "She's remarkable. Ryan absolutely adores her, and we can see why." She paused and adjusted her coffee cup. "But I do want to share something with you, as her sister, because I think you'll understand where I'm coming from." She looked at me with an expression that was almost sympathetic. "Ryan's family has a certain standing in this community. His father's business, our connections, the circles we move in it, comes with expectations. For Ryan, for Claire, and for the people who will be in their lives. Another pause. It's nothing personal, but I do think it's important that you understand your role going forward. Claire is joining our family. That means certain things will naturally shift. You've done a wonderful job looking after her, but she'll have us now. I let her finish. I kept my face neutral. Then I said, "Are you asking me to step back from my sister's life?" She smiled, the kind of smile that means yes, without saying it. "I'm asking you to be realistic about what you have to offer her going forward. She's moving into a different world now. A college education, a business, a family with resources and reputation. These things will open doors for Claire that, with the best intentions in the world, you simply won't be able to open for her. I'd hate for you to feel out of your depth at family events or to put Claire in an uncomfortable position." I picked up my coffee. I drank some. I set it down. I said, "I appreciate you being direct, and I meant it, because at least now I knew exactly what I was dealing with." I paid for my coffee at the counter on the way out, and I drove back to work, and I did not call Claire, and I did not say anything to Daniel until that evening. When I told him, he was quiet for a long time. "Do you want me to do something about it?" he asked. "No," I said. "Not yet." He nodded. He knew me well enough to know that I had a threshold, and we had not reached it. The wedding was in May, at a country club in the Ballantine area that Margaret had selected because it had hosted, according to her, 3 debutante balls and a state senator's daughter's reception. It was beautiful in the way that expensive things are beautiful, impeccable, and slightly cold. Claire was luminous. Ryan looked at her like she was a question he had finally found the answer to. I was getting ready in the bridal suite with Claire and her bridesmaids when the message came. It was from Margaret, a text, sent to me and not to Claire. "We'd like to seat you at table 12. It's near the rear exit, which we thought would be more comfortable. Also, your +1 situation, we've adjusted the seating slightly to reflect the dinner count." My +1 was my husband of 4 years. I took a breath and said nothing, and kept helping Claire with her veil. An hour before the ceremony, Gerald found me alone in the hallway near the coat room. He didn't bother with preamble. "You got Margaret's message," he said. I told him I had. "Good. We just want everyone comfortable." He said it like he was doing me a favor. "Claire is going to have a wonderful life. Ryan will take care of her." He paused and looked at me, the way you look at something you're deciding whether to move. "You've done your part. There's no need to make today about you." I looked at him for a moment. Then I said, "Noted," and I walked away. I was standing near the entrance to the main reception hall when Margaret appeared with 2 of her friends. They were talking in the low, carrying way that people use when they want to be overheard. "She means well," Margaret was saying, "but you can see she doesn't quite fit, can't you? Claire's made something of herself, but the sister, she's sweet. I'm sure it's just a different world." One of the friends murmured agreement. The other one caught my eye and looked away. I stepped forward. "Margaret," I said, keeping my voice even, "I think I'll wait outside." She turned. Something moved across her face, not guilt, just recalibration. "Of course," she said pleasantly. "That's probably for the best." I walked out through the main entrance, past the valets, and down to the fountain in front of the building. The air was warm, and the fountain was running, and I sat down on the stone edge, and I called Daniel. "They asked me to step out," I told him. "Specifically, Margaret. She's been making it very clear all day that I'm not welcome." "Okay," he said, and his voice was calm in the way that it gets when he is actually not calm at all. "Stay there. Don't go back in. I'm 2 minutes out." He arrived in 4 minutes. He kissed me on the cheek and asked me to tell him exactly what had been said and when. I told him all of it, the coffee meeting, the text about the table, Gerald in the hallway, Margaret with her friends. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Come back inside with me." "Daniel, you're not waiting outside your sister's wedding," he said. Not sharply, just firmly. He held out his hand and I took it. We walked back in together. Margaret was standing near the entrance to the hall with Gerald and several of their friends when she saw us. Her expression shifted through 3 or 4 things in about 2 seconds. She recovered quickly. "Daniel," she said, extending her hand. "So glad you made it." Daniel did not take her hand. He looked at her, and then at Gerald, and then back at her, and he said, in a voice that was entirely conversational, "I want to understand something. You asked my wife to leave." "Oh, it wasn't like that," Margaret said with a small laugh. "We were just trying to." She is the bride's sister, Daniel said. She raised Claire. She is my wife. And you asked her to leave. Daniel, I think there may have been a misunderstanding. There wasn't, he said. Gerald stepped forward slightly. Look, we didn't mean any offense. We just have a certain vision for the day, and I know what your vision was, Daniel said. He was still using the same conversational tone, which somehow made it worse. I've been patient about this because Sarah asked me to be. She's been patient because she didn't want to make today difficult for Claire. So let me be clear about something, and then we can all move on. He paused just long enough for it to land. Gerald, your dealership group has been in contract negotiations with my company for the last 6 months. Holloway Logistics handles fleet transport for 3 of your 5 locations. That renewal is on my desk right now. He let that sit for a second. And the new distribution contract your son and my sister-in-law are building, I've already agreed to be their first major client. He looked at Margaret. So, when you decided that Sarah didn't fit into the family and asked her to leave her own sister's wedding, you weren't just insulting my wife. You were making a business decision. And now I'm making one too. The hallway had gone very quiet. A few of their friends were pretending to look elsewhere. Daniel, Gerald said. His voice had changed. Let's not let one misunderstanding. The fleet contract renewal, Daniel said. I'll be letting your operations manager know on Monday that we're not moving forward. He turned to me. You ready to go find your sister? Margaret reached out and touched my arm. Her hand was light and she was smiling, but the smile was different now, thinner, with something panicked underneath it. Sarah, she said. Please, I want to apologize. I don't know what came over me. You are absolutely part of this family. And I never should have. I looked at her. I thought about the coffee shop, the way she had smiled when she said you've done your part, the way she had talked about me to her friends in the hallway 10 minutes ago. I thought about what it costs to spend your whole life working for something and then have someone look at you and see nothing. Margaret, I said, the person you owe an apology to is Claire, not me. I'll be fine. I looked at Daniel. Let's go. We found Claire in the bridal suite with 2 of her bridesmaids. She took one look at my face and sent the others out. What happened? She said. I told her. All of it. I had kept most of it from her for months, because I didn't want to complicate her happiness. But standing in that room with the noise of the reception starting outside the door, it seemed more important to be honest than to be comfortable. She listened with her hands folded in her lap, and her veil still on, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. I knew something was off, she said finally. I could feel it. She looked up at me. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want today to be about this. She stood up. She was almost a head shorter than me, same as when she was 7, and she hugged me the way she used to when she was little all the way. Both arms, her chin on my shoulder. You've always done that, she said. Taken the hard part so I didn't have to. She pulled back and looked at me. That stops now. She went and found Ryan. I don't know exactly what she said to him, and I have never asked. What I know is that Ryan had a very long, very quiet conversation with his parents before the reception began, and that when Gerald stood up to give his welcome toast, he said something about how family is built by the people who show up for each other, and that he was grateful for everyone who had made the day possible. He looked at me when he said it. I don't know if it was guilt or performance or something that had shifted in him in the last hour, and honestly, it didn't matter much to me either way. The wedding was beautiful. Claire walked down the aisle, and Ryan saw her, and his face did what faces do in that moment, the absolute helpless openness of it. And I stood beside the aisle, and I thought about our mother and the kitchen table, and the farmer's market, and the drive back from Columbus, and all the quiet ordinary Tuesdays that had carried us from there to here. After the reception, when the dancing had started, and the candles had burned low, Claire found me at a table with Daniel, and sat down, and took off her heels, and leaned against my shoulder, the way she used to when she was little and watching television. I talked to Ryan, she said. The fleet contract is his family's problem to deal with. Daniel made a business decision, and they'll have to live with that. But I want you to know, Ryan's with me on this. Going forward, you are part of our life. Full stop. Nobody gets to change that. I know, I said. I mean it, she said. I know you do. She was quiet for a moment, watching the dance floor. Then she said, I'm going to make partner in 5 years. And when I do, I want to be able to look at you and say I did it because of what you showed me. She turned and looked at me directly. You never asked anyone for anything. You just worked. You just showed up. Every time. Her eyes were bright. That's not something to be embarrassed about. That's everything. I didn't say anything because I didn't trust my voice right then. Daniel put his hand over mine on the table. In the weeks after the wedding, Gerald did reach out to Daniel's operations manager. He asked whether there was any path to renegotiation. Daniel had his team review the terms and came back with new conditions that were more favorable to Holloway Logistics, which, in fairness, they should have been from the start. Gerald agreed. The relationship continued, but on different terms, the kind of terms that happen when someone realizes they have been negotiating from a position of false confidence. Ryan's parents never became people I was close to. Margaret sent me a handwritten note about 3 weeks after the wedding that was gracious and correct and meant little to me, though I kept it because Claire asked me to. I responded briefly and politely and let it be what it was. Some things don't transform. They just settle. What changed was everything else. Claire and Ryan's consulting practice grew quickly. They were good at it, precise and creative, and willing to work hard in the way that young people are when they know the work is theirs. Daniel brought them in as a vendor for a project midway through their first year, and then for 3 more after that, not as a favor. He has never been the kind of person to do favors that don't make sense. He brought them in because they were good. I kept my position at Holloway. I had been promoted to CFO by then, which was something I had worked toward for years and which, when it happened, felt exactly as I had always imagined it would, not triumphant, just right, the way a key feels when it fits a lock. I built a team I was proud of. I mentored 2 junior analysts who went on to better things. I learned, slowly, how to stop working at 10 o'clock on weeknights, which was harder than any professional challenge I had faced. Daniel and I bought a house that autumn. It was more house than I had ever expected to live in, with a yard that backed up to a creek and a kitchen with a window seat where I liked to read on Sunday mornings with coffee. We had dinner parties, something I had never in my life done before, and I found that I was genuinely good at them, that I liked having people around a table, that I had opinions about food and wine and the kind of conversation that goes late into the evening. One Sunday morning in January, I was sitting in that window seat with my coffee when I realized I felt something I could not immediately name. It took me a while to understand what it was because I had so little practice with it. It was stillness, not the absence of things, not exhaustion, not the pause before the next problem. Just a quiet, complete, undemanding sense of being exactly where I was supposed to be. Daniel came downstairs and poured his coffee, and came to sit in the armchair across from me, and we just sat there for a while without talking. The creek running outside the window. The light coming in flat and pale. Winter white. "What are you thinking about?" he asked eventually. "Nothing specific," I said. "I think I'm just here." He smiled. He understood what I meant. That spring, Claire called me on a Tuesday evening. She said, "I have news." Her voice had the particular quality that means the news is large. "We're pregnant," she said. 8 weeks. I put my hand over my mouth. I could not have explained why. She laughed, nervous and joyful and a little undone, and I laughed too. And we stayed on the phone for almost an hour just talking about everything and nothing, the way we used to when she was in college and called me on Sunday nights, and I would sit on my apartment floor with my back against the couch and talk until it was late. When we hung up, I sat with my phone in my hands for a long time. I thought about my mother. I thought about the boxes she had stacked by the door for a man who never came back for them. I thought about how she had made dinner anyway. I thought about how she had never once, in all the years I was watching her, let the hardness show. She would have been such a good grandmother. I will carry that. I think I will always carry it. But I have come to understand, in the years since she died, that grief and gratitude can exist in the same space without canceling each other out. That you can miss someone every day and still look at your life and find it full. Daniel and I have been talking, recently, about what comes next for us. Nothing definitive, just the kind of conversations that people have when they are not afraid of the future, open, unhurried, genuinely curious. I turned 38 in March, and I felt, for the first time I can remember, exactly my age. Not younger, not older, just myself. Some mornings I think about that hallway at the country club, Margaret's hand on my arm, the smile that was really an apology she hadn't earned yet. I don't think about it with bitterness. I think about it because it is a useful thing to remember the moment when someone decided I did not belong and was wrong about it in every direction. I have never needed someone to tell me what I am worth. But I will admit that it meant something, standing there next to Daniel, watching the understanding move across Gerald's face like weather. Not because I needed the validation, but because Claire was inside getting married, and she was going to have a good life, and she was going to have it with people who understood, finally and fully, that her sister was not someone to be managed or minimized, or quietly moved to table 12 near the rear exit. That is what I want people to understand when I tell this story. Not the business angle, not the reversal of fortune, though both of those are real. What I want you to understand is this. I spent 20 years being the person who took the hard part so someone else didn't have to. I did it because I loved Claire, and because there was no one else, and because that was simply what the situation required. And at some point along the way, without meaning to, I had become someone with a career and a marriage and a home and a life that was mine in the way that things are only yours when you build them. Margaret looked at me and saw a woman without a college degree and a dead mother and no family money, and she thought she knew what that added up to. She thought it added up to nothing. She was wrong. She was wrong in all the ways that matter, and my life is the proof of it, and I do not need her to understand that. I just need to know it myself. And I do. I have, for a while now, on quiet Sunday mornings with my coffee and the creek outside the window, and my husband in the chair across from me, and my sister's voice still warm in my memory from the night she told me I was everything she had learned from. That is enough. That is, in fact, more than enough. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.